Kemi believed love should feel like ease. Not the kind that demanded patience, endurance, or sacrifice, but the kind that softened life. The kind that paid rent on time, filled the fridge without arguments, and made weekends predictable. She had grown up watching her mother struggle beside a man who worked hard yet never seemed to rise above survival. Kemi had promised herself, silently and fiercely, that her own life would be different. So when Tunde Adeyemi walked into her life, everything about him felt like an answered prayer. He was calm, well-spoken, confident without noise. He dressed neatly, smelled faintly of expensive cologne, and drove a car that didn't complain when traffic held it hostage for hours on 3rd Mainland Bridge. He worked as a senior operations manager for an oil servicing company in Victoria Island, and he spoke about work with certainty, targets, deadlines, meetings abroad. Kemi, those words sounded like security. They met at a friend's birthday dinner in Lekki Phase 1. The restaurant was loud with laughter and clinking glasses, but Tunde listened when she spoke. He asked questions. He paid attention. When he dropped her off that night, he didn't rush the goodbye. He simply said, "I'd like to see you again," as though it was a fact, not a request. Kemi liked facts. Facts were reliable. Their relationship moved quickly. Dates turned into routines. Routines turned into expectations. Within a year, Tunde proposed, quietly, without drama. Kemi said yes without hesitation. Not because her heart raced wildly, but because her future finally looked stable. The wedding was tasteful, not excessive. Friends praised her choice. Her aunties nodded approvingly. "You married well," one of them whispered. Kemi smiled. Married life fit her like a tailored dress. Their apartment in Lekki was airy and well-furnished. Rent was paid months ahead. The generator worked. Power stayed on. Groceries arrived without budgeting conversations. Tunde handled things effortlessly, and Kemi leaned into that ease without guilt. In the first year she was affectionate. She laughed easily. She posted pictures of their outings, brunches, birthdays, weekend getaways, with captions that spoke of gratitude and love. She called him "my king" in public and corrected anyone who joked that she had married money. "I married a man," she would say firmly. But love built on comfort is quiet when comfort remains, and loud when it disappears. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning. Tunde read it at his desk, surrounded by the familiar hum of office life. First he thought it was a mistake. He reread the subject line, then the body. The words blurred slightly as his chest tightened. Due to company restructuring. He didn't finish reading. He didn't need to. Years of loyalty. Late nights. Missed holidays. Reduced to a paragraph. He sat there for a long time, staring at his screen, listening to the sound of his own breathing. Lagos traffic roared outside, indifferent to his unraveling. People walked past his glass office, carrying files, sipping coffee, laughing. Life moved forward without him. He didn't tell Kemi immediately. That evening he came home later than usual. He showered longer than necessary, as though water could rinse away reality. At dinner, Kemi talked about her day, about a friend's upcoming baby shower, about a new restaurant she wanted to try. Tunde nodded, responded when necessary, smiled when expected. He told her the next night. They were seated on opposite ends of the couch. The television played quietly, forgotten. "I lost my job," he said. Kemi blinked once. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice controlled. "There was a restructuring. They let a lot of people go." He sat upright. "So what happens now?" "I'll look for something else," he replied. "It may take some time, but I'll find something." She nodded slowly. Her face gave nothing away. "Okay," she said. But something shifted in the room. In the days that followed, Kemi watched him closely. She noticed how often he checked his phone. How his laughter faded. How he sat quietly at the dining table, sending out applications late into the night. She noticed and she withdrew. First it was subtle. She stopped asking how his interviews went. She stopped cooking regularly. She complained more openly about expenses. Do you know how much groceries cost now? Power bills are crazy. My friends' husbands are traveling again. Tund absorbed it all silently. He told himself it was stress. He told himself things would return to normal once he found another job. But weeks turned into months. Lagos was unforgiving to unemployed men. Promises were made and forgotten. Interviews ended with polite smiles and no calls back. Tund's savings dwindled. The certainty he once carried dissolved into quiet anxiety. And Kemi's patience evaporated. She began to speak sharply. Her tone hardened. She avoided him when friends visited. She started sleeping with her back turned. One evening, after yet another argument about money, she said the words that cut deepest. "You're not a man anymore." Tund didn't respond. He couldn't. He felt something inside him fracture, not loudly, not dramatically, but enough to change him. The final confrontation came when the landlord called. 6 months' rent was due. Tund sat at the edge of the bed that night, head bowed, hands clasped. He was ashamed. He was tired. He was afraid. Kemi stood by the door, arms crossed. "I can't do this," she said. "I didn't marry to struggle. This is my home," he whispered. She looked away. "I paid rent before. Now I can't. You have to leave." She packed his clothes into a travel bag and placed it near the door. The gesture was efficient. Final. Tund stood there, stunned, holding the bag that now contained his life. As he stepped out into the night, the door closed behind him, not with anger but with indifference. And in that silence, Tund realized something terrifying. The love he thought he had was never meant to survive hardship. It was only meant to enjoy comfort. The first night after Kemi closed the door on him, Tund did not cry. He stood outside the compound gate in Lekki with his travel bag at his feet, staring at the painted walls that had once been his home. The security light flickered, buzzing softly, as though unsure whether it should stay on or go dark. Cars passed on the road beyond the estate, their headlights sweeping briefly across his face before moving on. No one stopped. Nothing dramatic happened. And somehow that made it worse. He picked up his bag and walked. He walked until the neat streets of Lekki gave way to noisier roads, until the smell of perfume and quiet generators was replaced by exhaust fumes and shouting hawkers. His phone buzzed several times, bank alerts reminding him of how little remained. He switched it off. That night, he slept on a friend's couch in Surulere. The friend was kind but awkward. He asked questions gently at first, then less gently. By the second night, the unspoken tension filled the room. By the third morning, Tund knew he could not stay. He left early, before his presence became an inconvenience. The days that followed blurred into one long stretch of exhaustion. Tund walked Lagos like a ghost. He spent hours sitting on benches, watching buses pull up and leave, watching men his age rush into offices with purpose in their steps. He avoided familiar places, afraid of being recognized. Shame clung to him like sweat in the afternoon heat. At night, sleep refused to come. When it did, it brought dreams he did not want, memories of laughter, of Kemi's voice calling his name softly, of a life that now felt like it belonged to someone else. His mind turned against him. You failed. You were never enough. She was right to leave. He stopped shaving. He stopped eating properly. He wore the same shirt for days, telling himself it didn't matter anymore. The man who once took pride in order and structure now struggled to find reasons to wake up. The city was loud, but inside him everything was quiet. One afternoon, as he sat under a bridge seeking shade, he noticed his hands shaking. Not from hunger but from fear. Fear of the future. Fear of being stuck. Fear of being forgotten. He thought about calling Kemi. The thought came uninvited and unwelcome, but persistent. Maybe she would soften. Maybe she would listen. Maybe. He stopped himself. The memory of her packing his clothes played in his mind like a loop. The way she had looked away. The way her voice had held no regret. That door was closed. By the fourth week, Tun's thoughts grew darker. He wondered what it would feel like if he simply disappeared, if Lagos would even notice. He wondered if he had been foolish to believe love could be unconditional. He wondered if being a good man had ever mattered at all. On one particularly hot afternoon, the weight became unbearable. He walked without direction, his bag slung loosely over his shoulder, eyes fixed on the cracked pavement. He didn't notice where he was until a voice cut through the noise. "Tund!" He froze. That voice was familiar. He looked up slowly, squinting against the sun. "Sola?" he asked, disbelief thick in his voice. She stood a few steps away, holding her car keys, dressed simply but confidently. Her hair was neatly pulled back, her posture steady. She looked at him for a long moment, her expression shifting from surprise to concern. "What happened to you?" she asked softly. Tund opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in weeks, words failed him completely. Sola did not press him. She simply said, "Come. Let me buy you food." He hesitated, pride rising weakly from where it had been buried. But hunger won. They sat at a roadside buka, the kind he used to avoid when life was comfortable. Sola watched him eat quietly, noticing how he devoured the food as though unsure when his next meal would come. Only after he finished did she ask, "Talk to me." And so he did. He told her everything. The job, the marriage, the eviction, the shame. His voice cracked once. Then again. He did not bother hiding it. Sola listened without interrupting. She did not offer empty comfort. She did not judge. When he finished, she took a slow breath. "You know," she said, "we used to talk about moments like this when we were kids." He frowned. "What do you mean?" She smiled faintly. "About falling. About failing. About getting back up." He shook his head. "I don't think I can." She leaned forward slightly. "You don't have to be strong today. You just have to not give up." She told him about her business, a growing logistics startup. About how she needed someone dependable, someone who understood systems and people. She did not offer him charity. She offered him work. "Temporary," she said. "Earn your way back. Rebuild." Tund stared at her, stunned. "Why?" he asked. "After all these years?" She shrugged. "Because I know who you are." Something shifted inside him. Not hope, not yet. But possibility. That night, Tund slept in a small guest room at Sola's place. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't permanence. But it was safe. For the first time since everything fell apart, he slept without fear. The next morning he woke up early. To shave. He bathed. He wore a clean shirt. As he stepped outside, the city felt different, not kinder, not easier, but no longer impossible. Tund did not know it yet, but the lowest point of his life had already passed. What lay ahead would test him again. But this time he would not face it alone. The first week at Sola's office felt unreal to Tund. Not because the work was easy, it wasn't, but because he had not realized how deeply unemployment had damaged his sense of worth. Each morning, as he ironed his shirt and prepared to leave the apartment, he felt a quiet fear settle in his chest. A fear that someone would suddenly realize he didn't belong there. That he was pretending. That he was only tolerated out of pity. Sola's office was modest, tucked into a converted building in Yaba. No flashy signboard. No glass walls. Just people moving with purpose. Phones ringing. Boxes stacked neatly. Delivery schedules pinned to boards. It smelled of paper, coffee, and effort. On his first day, Sola introduced him simply. "This is Tund. He'll be helping us streamline operations." No explanation. No apology. And for that, Tund was grateful. He worked quietly at first, observing more than speaking. He studied how things moved, where delays happened, where communication broke down, where stress piled up unnecessarily. Felt familiar. It reminded him of who he used to be before life knocked him flat. At night, exhaustion replaced despair. He would lie on the narrow bed in the guest room, his body aching, his mind buzzing with tasks for the next day. Sleep came quickly now, without the weight of shame pressing him awake. But healing is never a straight line. Some evenings, after work, the silence returned. He would sit alone, staring at his phone, scrolling past pictures of people living lives that looked untouched by loss. Sometimes Kemi's name crossed his mind unexpectedly, something she would have said, the way she used to laugh when she was pleased. He told himself not to think about her. Still the wound was fresh. One night, he overheard Sola on a phone call, calmly handling a client who was shouting on the other end. When she hung up, she laughed softly and shook her head. "You learn patience when things don't come easy," she said. Tun nodded. "I'm learning that now." She looked at him for a long moment. "No," she said gently. "You're remembering it." That sentence stayed with him. Week by week, Tun's confidence returned, not dramatically but steadily. He began making suggestions. Some were accepted. Some were questioned. Few were rejected. But he did not shrink when that happened. He adjusted. He improved. He learned. He began earning again. The first time his phone buzzed with a salary alert, he stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't a large amount, but it felt monumental. Proof that he was still capable. That he had not been erased. He sent part of the money to his mother without explanation. She called him immediately, worried. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I'm fine," he replied, voice steady. "I'm working again." She cried quietly on the phone. He let her. With routine came dignity. He started shaving regularly again. He bought new shirts, nothing expensive but clean and well-fitted. He looked people in the eye when he spoke. He stopped walking with his shoulders hunched. The man who had once wandered the streets like a shadow was slowly reappearing. One evening after a long day, Sola invited him to sit with her on the balcony. The city lights flickered below them, Lagos alive as always, restless, noisy, unforgiving. "You've changed," she said. He smiled faintly. "I had to." She nodded. Hard seasons either break people or refine them. Tund exhaled slowly. "I thought losing my job was the worst thing that could happen to me. And now I realize it was losing myself." Sola leaned back in her chair. "People don't talk enough about how men grieve," she said. "You're expected to be strong immediately. Fix things fast. To not feel." He swallowed. "I felt everything." "And you survived," she replied simply. The company began to grow. New contracts came in. More delivery vehicles were added. The team expanded. Tun took on more responsibility not because he asked, but because he earned it. He worked late nights, not out of desperation but commitment. He mentored younger staff, recognizing the uncertainty in their eyes, the same uncertainty he once carried. One afternoon during a team meeting, Sola paused mid-discussion. "Tund," she said, "walk them through the new process." He stood up without hesitation. As he spoke, something inside him settled. This was where he belonged. Not just in a job but in purpose. Yet healing also required facing what had broken him. There were days when anger surfaced unexpectedly. Anger at Kemi, himself, at the world. He wrestled with the urge to prove something, to show her what she had lost. But slowly, he realized something important. He did not need her validation to heal. One weekend, Sola asked him a question he had been avoiding. "Have you forgiven her?" He thought about it for a long time. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I'm not letting what she did define me anymore." "That's a start," she said. As months passed, Tund saved enough to rent a small apartment of his own. The day he moved out of Sola's place, they stood awkwardly in the living room, unsure how to mark the moment. "Thank you," he said finally. "For everything." She smiled. "Just don't forget who you are again." He promised he wouldn't. That night, alone in his new space, Tund sat on the bare floor, surrounded by boxes, and breathed deeply. The room was quiet. Not empty but peaceful. He had lost a marriage. He had lost a job. He had lost himself. But he had found something more valuable: resilience. And as he lay down to sleep, Tund understood a truth that would guide him forward. Being broken had taught him how to stand. Success did not arrive loudly in Tund's life. It did not announce itself with champagne or applause. It came quietly, disguised as consistency, as early mornings, as careful decisions made when no one was watching. 2 years passed. In that time, Sola's logistics company transformed from a struggling startup into a respected mid-sized firm. They moved from the cramped Yaba office into a proper building in Ikeja. The walls were freshly painted, the desks new, the air conditioners humming steadily. Their clients now included companies Tund once dreamed of working with again. And Tund, no longer the broken man wandering the streets, was now head of operations. The role fit him like memory. He knew how to handle pressure, how to read people, how to solve problems without noise. His name carried weight again. Not because he demanded respect, but because he earned it. He rented a modest but comfortable apartment. He paid his bills on time. He sent money home regularly. He slept well. Most importantly, he was at peace. He rarely thought of Kemi anymore. When he did, it was without anger, without longing. She had become part of his past, an important chapter, but not the whole story. That was why, when his assistant walked into his office one Tuesday afternoon and said, "Sir, there's a woman here asking to see you," Tund barely looked up. "Does she have an appointment?" he asked. "No," the assistant replied hesitantly. "But she insists. She says it's important." Tund sighed. "What's her name?" Pause was brief but heavy. "Kemi." The name landed like a soft blow to the chest. Tund looked up slowly. For a moment he considered refusing. He owed her nothing. He had already rebuilt his life without her presence. But curiosity tugged gently at him. Not curiosity rooted in bitterness, but closure. "Let her in," he said. When Kemi stepped into the office, Tund almost didn't recognize her. She looked different. Still beautiful but worn. Her confidence no longer filled the room. Her shoulders sloped slightly, her smile hesitant. She wore heels, but they didn't seem to carry her the way they once had. She froze when she saw him. He stood up calmly. "Kemi," he said. "Tund," she replied, voice barely above a whisper. Silence stretched between them. The office, once a place of control and purpose, felt suddenly too small for the history they shared. "I didn't know you worked here," she said finally. "I do," he replied simply. She glanced around the office, her eyes lingering on the furniture, the framed certificates, the confident air he carried so effortlessly now. "I heard someone mentioned your name," she continued. "I wasn't sure it was you." He nodded. "It is." She swallowed. "You look well." "So do you," he lied gently. Kemi clasped her hands together. "I didn't come to cause trouble," she said quickly. I needed to see you." "Why?" he asked. She hesitated. "Because I owe you an apology." The words hung in the air. Tund felt no rush of triumph, no satisfaction, just a quiet understanding. "I was afraid," she went on, voice trembling. "When you lost your job, everything I thought I needed disappeared. Panic. I didn't know how to stay." "You didn't try," he said softly. She flinched. "You're right," she whispered. "I didn't." She told him about her life after he left. How she moved in with a friend. How the man she later dated, wealthy, charming, turned out to be unreliable. How the comfort she chased kept slipping through her fingers. "I thought money would protect me," she said. "But I was wrong." Tund listened. Not with the heart of a wounded husband, but with the clarity of a healed man. "I'm sorry," she said again. "For what I did. For how I treated you." He nodded slowly. "I forgive you," he said. She looked up, startled. "You do?" "Yes," he replied. "But forgiveness doesn't mean going back." Tears filled her eyes. "I know," she said. They sat in silence again, this time lighter. When she stood to leave, she paused at the door. "I'm glad you're okay," she said. "So am I," he replied. After she left, Tund sat alone for a long time. He realized something profound. He no longer needed validation from the past to move forward. That evening, Sola invited him to dinner. She noticed the shift in his energy immediately. "You saw her," she said. "Yes. And I'm free," he replied. She smiled knowingly. The following months brought more growth. The company expanded again. New partnerships formed. One evening, during a board meeting, Sola made an announcement. "Tund will be joining us as a partner," she said. Applause filled the room. Tund felt his chest tighten, not with fear but gratitude. Later that night, standing alone on his balcony, city lights blinking below, Tund reflected on how far he had come. He had lost love built on convenience. He had gained purpose built on resilience. And for the first time he understood something clearly. Sometimes life removes people not to punish you but to protect you. Tund did not feel triumphant after Kemi walked out of his office. There was no urge to call anyone and announce how far he had come. No desire to replay the moment in his head to savor it. Instead, there was a strange calm, a quiet closure that settled gently in his chest, like a wound finally allowed to heal. He realized then that growth was not loud. It was peaceful. Life moved forward steady and sure. As a partner in the company, Tund's responsibilities increased, but so did his sense of purpose. He no longer worked from fear of falling back into nothingness. He worked because he believed in what he was building. One afternoon, while reviewing reports, he paused and stared out of his office window. Cars crawled along the road below. People hurried with places to be. Lagos remained relentless, unapologetic. Yet for the first time it did not intimidate him. That evening, he visited his mother. She lived in a modest house on the mainland, the same one he grew up in. As she served him food, she watched him closely, the way mothers do when they sense change. "You look settled," she said. "I am," he replied. She nodded. "Hard times teach lessons comfort never can." He smiled. "I learned that the hard way." Later that night, as he drove home, Tund reflected on the man he used to be, the version of himself that believed love was proven through provision alone. He had measured his worth by what he could give materially, not by who he was. Losing everything had stripped him down to his core. And in that emptiness, he had discovered something essential. A man's value is not erased by misfortune. And love that disappears during hardship was never love at all. Months later, fate crossed their paths again. This time, it wasn't in an office or a place of power. It was at a small community center where the company sponsored a youth empowerment program. Tund had come to speak to young men about resilience, about failure, about rebuilding. As he stood at the podium, scanning the audience, his eyes caught on a familiar face. Kemi sat quietly at the back. She looked smaller than before. Not broken but humbled. Tund spoke honestly that day. He did not mention her. He did not need to. "I once believed my worth ended when my income stopped," he said. "I learned that hardship doesn't make you weak. It reveals what you're made of." The room was silent. "Choose partners who believe in you when things are uncertain," he continued. "Because certainty does not last forever." When the event ended, Kemi approached him briefly. "You spoke well," she said. "Thank you," he replied. There was no awkwardness, no bitterness, just mutual understanding. As she walked away, Tund felt no pull to follow. He had finally let go. Life, however, had more to offer. Not long after, Tund met Aisha. She was not impressed by his title or his position. She met him before knowing any of that. They spoke for hours about books, life, mistakes, and healing. When he told her his story, she listened, not with pity but respect. "I admire people who rebuild," she said. That was all. No judgment, no fear. With Aisha, love felt different. Slower, honest, rooted in friendship and understanding. She asked questions when things were hard. She stayed present when answers weren't immediate. Tund took his time. He had learned not to rush comfort again. One evening, sitting together in silence, he realized something quietly profound. This was what partnership felt like. Not dependence, not escape, but support. Years later, when people asked Tund about his journey, he never spoke with anger. He spoke with clarity. He told them about losing his job, about losing his marriage, about losing himself, and then about finding his way back with help, humility, and perseverance. He never painted Kemi as a villain. He understood now that fear had driven her choices, just as pride once drove his. But he also understood the truth. Love that survives only abundance is fragile. Love that survives uncertainty is rare. On a quiet Sunday morning, as sunlight filtered into his home, Tund stood by the window and smiled. He had once been chased out of a house because he could not pay rent. Now he lived in a life built on respect. And that was worth more than anything money could buy. Marrying for wealth may secure comfort, but it cannot secure loyalty. True love is revealed not when life is easy, but when it is uncertain. Hardship does not destroy good people. It exposes false love and refines real character. And sometimes, losing everything is exactly what you need to finally find yourself. Thank you for watching. Hit the subscribe button and like if you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to tell us what you think of the story and where you are watching from. Bye for now.